Hi guys, interesting updates from Iceland today. We will speak about the time and location of the potential next eruption. There's new assumptions as of when this is going to happen or what could happen. And we have two scientists disagree again. Grindavik is open very, very soon again for the public at their own risk. So what does that mean? And then let's also talk about what the Icelandic Met Office has released as far as where are we with the land rise right now. So let's start with Grindavik. So starting Monday, the 21st of October, Grindavik will be reopened for everyone. This is what they have stated at a meeting of the Grindavik Executive Committee in regards to their operations that they have conducted in Grindavik, repairing and filling these cracks. So they have repaired some cracks to make the roads accessible again, but they have also installed over 7 kilometers of fencing to fence off dangerous areas, sinkholes, and cracks. So they say, despite the fact that Grindavik will be open to the public again, the emergency responders and the field management will continue their work as usual in and around the town, and that they also will have an electronic measuring of the traffic that's going in and out of the time. They say this is for safety purposes in the event of an evacuation, so that they know who is still in there, who left, because the next eruption could happen very, very soon, maybe sooner than we think. Who knows? We will get to that. Why are they opening? In their announcement, they're saying that they have done countermeasures to increase the security in Grindavik, and that included, amongst other things, like mapping the cracks, additional land surveying, geodetic measurements, and also visual inspections. You know, there was a lot of criticism about like opening, and after this worker fell into the crack and vanished in January, his brother recently said, I want him to be found. And then the first results of investigations have been released and say it was negligence of the company that has conducted that work, that he was left alone there, he wasn't tied to anything, and stuff like this. So they basically said it could have been preventable. So the safety measures were not enough, basically. So they filled the cracks, they fenced off the cracks, and then they were conducting tests, driving over the roads and the cracks with large trucks and semis that had weights on them, like concrete blocks. So they were going back and forth so that they would see, will it reopen? Is that... Because the thing is, you put pressure on this crack, and let's say there is a bridge or something where the fill materialize on, it might not reopen while you drive over it, but you might crack something and then later on it reopens and sinks, and then you have the crack again. So is that really a measurement that I would trust? Not really, in my opinion. So right now they're putting, that's what they're saying, finishing touches on like signs that say area is clear, signs that say there's dangerous areas, that this will be marked separately. They say there's still the risk that cracks might reopen or new cracks might form, especially like in open fields in and around the town of Grindavik that have not been inspected yet. But again, the police chief of Sudorns makes it really clear that they're not responsible if something's happening. He says people are responsible for themselves. And also he says Grindavik is not a place for children. So don't let your children run around unattended or let them play in the fields. He says, quote, everyone must be responsible for their own actions or inactions. That's the line they have been using since November, basically. Starting at 6 a.m. October 21st, the barriers will be removed, and basically Grindavik will be open until they will declare a danger level again, which they most likely will while the eruption is coming closer. When it's really close, then they will probably change that again. And they say Like the earthworks, the work that they're doing in and around Grindavik is not by any means finished. And that's why it's very, very important to proceed with the utmost care. And that's why they say the conditions in the town can change quickly, and it may be necessary to evacuate the town and its surrounding in a short notice again, and then close it, of course, again. So in Iceland, on the Reykjanes Peninsula, where we have the problem right now, there will be elections that are going to be hosted on Saturday, November 30th. That's why a professor that works at the Icelandic meteorological office, Benedict of Fon, has said, well, wouldn't that be something if we had an eruption starting on election day? Yeah, interesting. Would there even be an election? At least not in the areas that are affected by the eruption. But that tells you what they estimate could be a potential date for the next eruption. And Benedict of Fon is the head of deformation measurements at the Icelandic Meteorological Office. So what is he saying about what's currently going on? He says the land rise is continuing at Svartsengi, but he says there are indications that it has slowed down a little bit and that the magma influx in the magma chamber underneath Svartsengi has reduced a little bit. But he also says it's difficult to really determine what this really means, and it's way too early to make any interpretation or any predictions for the future, because that could change in a heartbeat again. So we know we're waiting for the next eruption. The previous eruption has ended on September 5th after lasting for 2 weeks. So that was the third longest eruption that has occurred in this Sutnuka crater series since December 2023. And it was also the most powerful. Benedict of Fon says that everything could remain calm until about mid-November. That's when we should be on a higher alert again. He says, quote, it's unlikely that anything will happen until mid-November, and maybe then they will have to reevaluate and see. They want to release more information at the beginning of November, because he said that could be the time when that magmatic system, when the volcanic system will approach the volume limits again in that magma chamber, right? If the point of maximum elasticity is reached, the likelihood that the magma will be sent out in an eruption is increasing. One trend that they're seeing is that the times between the eruptions, the time that goes from one eruption to the next, it's getting longer. So that's why Benedict says we should experience or expect a longer wait time. It could be even until December or even until next year. And his conclusion is that it seems to be getting harder and harder for the magma to reach the surface. And he says, hopefully, that's an indication that we could maybe see the end of the whole cycle of eruptions. And here we go. Benedict of Fon versus Thorvaldur Thorvaldsson with his prediction. So Thorvaldur Thorvaldsson is a professor of volcanology, and he has said in an interview just a little while ago that he could see the probability of a dung eruption in the Sutnuka crater series, and that the probability of that increases with time. So a more explosive, splattering eruption in this area. But then Benedict of Fon says, nope, I think that is extremely unlikely. So he has a total different opinion. So I think it's a guessing game, right? You can't blame them because they know that they basically don't know. He thinks there is not enough magma available to sustain a large eruption like Thorvaldur might have predicted. So because he says most of the dikes that we're seeing right now have basically formed as a result of an ice age glacier retreating. And when this glacier was thinning, that's when the big dike eruptions occurred. But he says we haven't seen any eruptions on the Reykjanes Peninsula for millennia that would be like this. So he says, I don't think there's any evidence that there's enough magma to produce something that Thorwald Thorwaldsen thinks could be likely. So it's one versus the other. I hope in that case that the Icelandic Met Office is right, that there won't be a big eruption. Speaking of that, let's have a look at what the Icelandic Meteorological Office has released. So they say during the last 7 days, the magma accumulation underneath Svartsengi, where the geothermal power plant and the Blue Lagoon are located, has continued at a similar pace. And also their GPS measurements in the Svartsengi area show that the continuation of the land rise is stable. Last week, they had some model indication that the land rise was slightly decreasing, but there are no indications right now that it would slow down even more. So they say it very clear, nothing in the current data indicates that the magma accumulation underneath Svartsengi is stopping. And you see the graph here, you basically see these vertical red lines. They mark basically the end of one eruption and then the beginning of the next eruption. So it starts with the blue line, that was the magma intrusion on November 10th. And then it was filling up. Then we see the first red line, basically December 18th. That was when an eruption started. And then the land started rising again. And we've seen this from eruption to eruption. And now on the very right end where the blue dot is, that is where we are right now. So it is rising, it's filling up. It's quite high up there. So we will have to see what that means. And if you look at the other graph, that shows it in millimeters. So we have not reached the point of fill amount that it had when the last eruption started. But definitely we have seen the amount of the June eruption. But the trend is, since that area where the magma is accumulating is stretching, that we will have to see more magma in that magma chamber until we see the next eruption. And that's why they're saying maybe end of November. We have to be vigilant mid-November, because then it's probably reaching the same level that it had when the last eruption started. And then from there, the chances are getting higher with every day. So we know that on August 22nd, when we saw the last eruption, that there was about 24 million cubic meter of magma that was then transported from the magma chamber into the Sutnuka crater series. They have also released an updated hazard assessment. So you see there is an elevated risk for the area where the last eruption was occurring. And you see the darker spots in the orange area. That is the lava flow. That is the new lava carpet that it has produced. And that's quite a large one. And this is what's a little bit concerning. And this is what they're saying is the warning time for an impending eruption can be very, very short. And they outline this. They say the first signs of magma flow are the intensity of the earthquakes, a rapid increase of deformation, and pressure changes in the boreholes that they have there. So the time that could pass from the first signs to the start of a possible eruption can be very short. It could be down to 30 minutes, like it was in the last eruption on August 22nd. So for now, they kind of are saying they want to make the town of Grindavik more livable. This is what I don't understand, because residents were being bought out, moving somewhere else. But that's why basically they have decided that the security right now is deemed high enough so that they could lift the blockages and let the public back in. So the mayor of Grindavik, and he points that out because now that it's open, a lot of tourists might come in there. So he says the area has been thoroughly scanned and dangerous places inside the town have been fenced off. So it should be relatively safe to go around there. He says the locals know the conditions very well. Yeah, I agree with that. And he says, but this is a question for tourists and other Icelanders who want to visit the town. What about them? They're not familiar with the risks. But he says, and we already see that the tourists are kind of rushing to enter the town. He says, well, he hopes that this opening will breathe life into the town. He hopes that this will happen. And he says their plan is that they're hoping that they can build some kind of economic activity, and that might be related to tourism. So are they turning Grindavik into a disaster place for tourists to look at? Because already, even while it was closed, there have been a lot of efforts from tourists that were trying to get into Grindavik. And then, of course, they have been turned away by the closing posts that were placed at all the exits and entrances of Grindavik. So the mayor is basically saying, he's inviting them now. He says, now there's an opportunity for them, but no one knows how much traffic will come to Grindavik, and maybe they need more restrictions again. But he says, well, you have to start somewhere. So he points out, and I don't know, guys, he says, the vast majority of residents have already requested the buyout of their houses, and the buyouts have been completed. So he says there's relatively few people living in the town at the moment. Yeah, because the town's not really safe to live in. So bringing in the tourists should make the town more lively. I don't know. It's just, let me know, guys, what do you think? Getting the locals out into safety and then bringing the tourists in. I don't know. It feels weird, but, if they tell the tourists what the risks are, I mean, there you go, right? It's always a risk involved if you do something dangerous. So thanks for watching, guys. Check out my recent Campiflegre update. And there's something else. There's another volcano that is escalating rapidly. And there's really similarities to what has happened in Iceland over the last year. So could we see something evolving that is similar, but there's more people living in the area of the other volcano? So check out these videos in the end screen, guys. I hope to see you very, very soon. Don't forget, I'm going live this Saturday at 2 p.m. Pacific and 5 p.m. Eastern, and I hope to see you there. Thank you, guys. Stay safe. Bye-bye.